We all know that we must keep holy the Sabbath day, but it's true also in this day and age, and especially in our society here, that we take it for granted that people work on Sundays. We go shopping on Sundays. Is that wrong? What does it really mean to keep holy the Sabbath day? And what are the responsibilities of Catholic employers? These are some of the questions that we'll be addressing today. But we begin, as we often do, with your perspective on the streets.
I think they should have Sunday off. It's important to have that day to relax.
I think for Christians, Sunday is an important day set aside for the worship of God, and also to, be concentrate on our relationships with family and friends.
I definitely believe people do need at least one day off of work, because there are a lot of people who are overworked, and just having that one day as rest, just to kind of contemplate on what they're doing and just to let everything sink in, like the week and what happened during the week.
Well, I think it's important for employers to be sensitive to the religious beliefs of their employees. So for instance, I think that perhaps employers should consider giving Muslims Friday off, giving Jewish people Saturday off, and certainly giving Christians Sunday off.
I know there are some workplaces people have to, like hospitals or restaurants. Yes, someone have to sacrifice their Sunday off.
Many people told me oh no, if we don't work on Sunday, we can lose money and we can lose our jobs or whatever. But it's more essential to focus on positive things and to think about in what way we are going to live a good life.
Those were the thoughts of some people on the streets in Toronto. And I think it's fair to say that with very few exceptions, most people are okay with working on Sundays, and they think it's okay to work on Sunday or religious holidays. Now, recently, Archbishop Daniel Bohan of Regina wrote a pastoral letter titled On Work and Worship to the Catholic people of the Archdiocese of Regina. And to tell us more about that letter and to help us unpack this topic a little further, I am now joined by Archbishop Daniel Bohan. Welcome, Your Grace.
Thank you.
So why did you write this letter?
Recently, the provincial government put out a new omnibus bill on labor in Saskatchewan.
Yes.
And the previous labor legislation had made specific mention that an employer was encouraged to give the Sunday as one of the days off that they would give to their employees.
Okay.
And the new legislation had removed that. So
that particular
reference to the Sunday. So
okay.
There is no reference to Sunday in the new legislation.
So the concern is?
The concern is by removing it, it takes away a guarantee, somewhat of a guarantee to people who want to practice their Catholic faith and to go to Mass on Sunday.
So you're saying that this is not so much a personal choice that I decide what I do with my Sunday, but it's a matter of religious freedom or social justice?
Yes, I believe that it's very much a part of the Church's teaching on justice in the workplace.
And you're not just talking about Catholic employers?
No. Well, I wrote the letter to Catholic employers because that's my,
okay.
my constituency.
Yes, of course.
You know. So, and hopefully any other Christian employer or even person of any religious faith who employs people would be respectful of that right that an individual has to practice their religion.
Right, so when you put it that way, you're not just talking about Christians who worship on Sunday, but Muslims, Friday, Jewish people on Saturday. You're saying that it's the same religious freedom and employers should be aware of that.
That's right, yes.
And not to say that, they're getting days off presumably anyway, and you're saying that at least one of those days should be either one of the days when their faith calls them to worship.
That's correct, yes.
What's the accurate understanding of work? Because that's also biblical, that we have to work. I mean, it's not like we're telling the people that they have to not work.
I grew up as a Catholic, well, not obviously, but I've grown up as a Catholic, and part of my formation as a Catholic in the home was always that on Sunday you don't do unnecessary work.
Okay. some people don't have a choice, right? I mean, and I'm not just talking about emergency personnel. I mean, in your province, all the farmers, the harvest has to be, harvested. You have to do it. You're not specifically referring to those situations, or how do we manage those situations?
I guess that would come under the understanding of what's necessary work and what's unnecessary work.
Okay, yeah, of course. Now, what about supporting work? Because maybe I don't work and I don't make my employees work, but I go shopping on Sunday, or I go to the amusement park on Sundays. Are you encouraging Catholics to not even do that?
Yes, I would do that. Because part of our faith is that we have to give some attention to God in a very specific way, not only as individuals, but as a community.
Uh-huh.
So I was brought up on Sunday, you don't do work you don't have to do. My mother would not do work unless she wouldn't do washing or ironing.
So she wouldn't do, really?
That's right.
Not even housework?
No, not even housework unless it was necessary.
Unless it was necessary.
So that we could give that time that I think we owe to God, and to thank God for the blessings that He gives us in our life.
Okay, so then that goes back to my question about work,
Yes.
and I guess it wasn't very clear. Work, why do we work? I mean, other than to make a living, is there more to work than just making money? And do we work to worship God in a sense?
Well,
Or can we?
work and worship are different things, although a person can do work for spiritual reasons.
Okay.
Work is part of our, I think it's Dies Domini talks about, our
Right.
working is cooperating with God in creation.
Uh-huh.
So there's a value to human work.
Right.
And because of that value, there's a dignity for the worker.
Okay. Of
And
course.
therefore, employers and governments who legislate around what happens to workers need to be aware that they must respect that dignity that every
Right.
worker has.
Right, because I think we're talking about work, we're talking about how we use our time, and I'm intrigued by your mother's, I guess, policy at home, that she would dedicate that time for specific things that maybe were not work related or not unnecessary. So what are we called to do in terms of how we use our time, in terms of our relationship with God?
Well, time is a part of God's gift to us, and so part of that we give back to God. I think that's a pretty fundamental Judeo-Christian idea, certainly, if not beyond that, to
But
other religions.
can I do that? Is there a conflict there? Can't I, through my work, give my time to God?
You can, but I guess it's like me talking to you. I could be doing something else while I'm talking to you, and so am I giving you my attention, and am I
see.
really respecting you?
I see.
If I'm also doing something else.
So you're saying that this Sabbath, and we're going to get to God resting on the Sabbath, but this Sabbath time is more than just resting or not working, but it's specifically a time that we need to focus our attention on God the same way that we're focusing attention on each other right now.
That's right, yes. And I think attached to that are the other things of value within that relationship. I think one thing about our faith is that pretty well across the board it's all about relationships. So today there's many pressures on the family,
Right.
huge
Yeah,
pressures,
yes.
and things that are causing a disintegration in family life, which is not good for us as human beings. So I think, again, in the way that I was brought up as a Catholic, it was a family time.
Right.
My father and mother were both there with us. We did things together,
Right.
and that was very important for our family life. We
Right.
ate together,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I see today, I've talked to young people, and I remember asking one of my high school catechism kids, how often do you eat with your family? And once a year.
Yeah, they don't.
So all of those things around the Lord's Day, this day of rest and valuing the important relationship with God and what flows from that, I think is extremely important for our health as a society.
As a society, and it starts in the family. It's so
Yes.
true. I mean, the value that was given to the Sunday dinner,
Yes.
that we try to do it in my home, and so many people don't have that. So there's even a healthy, you're saying that it's healthy for us to not be thinking about working and consumerism and having money or having a certain size house, that sometimes we can forego all that, spend time with our family, do activities that maybe don't involve spending money as a family, and that would make us happier.
Well, it would make us more whole, I would say, in our humanity. And it's partly our choice, like how we choose to do that. But for me, it's important that we be allowed to do that.
Right.
That people don't use their economic power or as employers or government to prevent people from doing that. You know, Pope Francis talks about the idolatry of money now. The new golden calf is wealth, you know, and what he calls a faceless economy, which has no respect for individuals. You know, and that's a tremendous power in our society. And I think that as a church leader, I need to speak out against that power if it takes away from the dignity of people and their freedom to do what's important for the whole rest of the other parts of their lives.
Absolutely, and to remind people that they have that freedom and what they need to be doing with their time. We're going to take a little break right now, but it's a short break, so don't go anywhere. We're talking about work and worship. When we come back, we're going to learn a little bit about what Pope John Paul II had to say about keeping the Lord's Day holy. So stay tuned.
Let us know your perspective. Email us at perspectives@saltandlighttv.org or reach us by mail. Perspectives at Salt and Light Television, 114 Richmond Street East, Toronto, Ontario, M5C 1P1. Or call us toll free at 1-888-302-7181. Let your perspective be heard.
The Paschal mystery of Christ is the full revelation of the mystery of the world's origin, the climax of the history of salvation, and the anticipation of the eschatological fulfillment of the world. What God accomplished in creation and wrought for his people in the Exodus has found its fullest expression in Christ's death and resurrection, though its definitive fulfillment will not come until the parousia, when Christ returns in glory. In him, the spiritual meaning of the Sabbath is fully realized, as St. Gregory the Great declares, "For us, the true Sabbath is the person of our Redeemer, our Lord Jesus Christ."
That was an excerpt from Pope John Paul II's apostolic letter Dies Domini on keeping the Lord's Day holy. Jesus is the true Sabbath. That's maybe a little hard to understand for some people.
Perhaps, but very consistent with everything we believe about Jesus as Catholic Christians. We say Jesus is the Alpha and the Omega. He's the beginning and the end, and everything in between. He's the way, the truth, and the life. He is the resurrection. He is the light of the world. Jesus is everything.
Right.
So our whole faith is about both allowing Jesus into our lives, but also entering into a communion with him. We become one with him, and when we become one with him, then we find brightness and light and life and freedom and rest.
Right.
You know.
Okay. So the Sabbath is specifically a day of rest?
It was the day God rested after creation.
Right.
Okay.
So is that why then we rest, or the Jewish people rested on the Sabbath?
Yes, I would think that was it took the Sabbath, this day of rest, which is a recognition of a human need.
Okay. Yes.
And it put it in the context of God's will for us. In other words, God always wants for us what's best, you know, in life. And Jesus said, "I came so that you may have life and have it to the full."
Yes.
So that's what we're about here.
Okay, so then is that the same as saying that we keep the Lord's Day holy? Rest and keeping the day holy, are they the same thing?
Well, yes. And of course, we're making a move here from the Sabbath to the Lord's Day as well, which is important for us. Eh?
Okay, yes.
And we see from the writings in the early church, like St. Justin Martyr, who wrote in the 100s, around the mid 100s, spoke about coming together on the day after the Sabbath, which was the day of the Lord's resurrection.
Yes.
You know, and this was the day that they came together, and they. And he described the Eucharist in those very early terms. So bringing the Sabbath, the day of rest, into the Lord's Day is something that the Christian Church has done since the time of the resurrection, the very earliest days. So that day then becomes a day of prayer, and when it's described in the Acts of the Apostles of the life of the community as the first thing that's mentioned.
Right.
And which ties in with our statements of the Church of the Second Vatican Council that the liturgy is the summit and peak of our Christian life. So everything flows from it.
Okay, which is why you titled your pastoral letter Work and Worship as opposed to Work and Rest.
That's right, yes.
So you're making a very specific point about our responsibility to worship on Sundays.
Yes. Yes, I mean, it's always been a belief of the Church that this is something that is not only extremely important, but it's obligatory. You know, when we're in relations, there are certain things that we need to do to keep relationships healthy. You know, and we don't make laws about them necessarily, but we might make our own laws about them personally. You know? And if we don't do this, then we know that the relationship enters into decline.
That's a great way to put it. You're making me think about, how all these, marriage prep and marriage counselors that tell couples to have a date night and schedule it. And once a week is your date night. So you're saying that Sunday is our date night in terms of the relationship with the Lord.
Yeah, because that's where we talk to Him, like the liturgy is a dialogue. We listen, we reply. That's where we enter into union with Him. You know, we'll become one with Him.
Which is different than, because some people would say, well, can I not just go to Mass on Wednesdays? But it's not the same.
No, it's not the same, because Sunday is the day for, the Church is a community of people. You know, we're the body of Christ. So we can't worship God without the community.
Right.
You know, it's really impossible to be an isolated individual Christian.
Yes.
I think that's something our society has drifted away from. We're a very individualistic society now, you know, and that has all sorts of other problems that are associated with it. But it also affects then if a government makes a law which treats religion as individualistic.
Right.
So it doesn't matter what day you get off, you do your thing.
Do your thing, exactly.
But for a Christian, no, you can't.
Yeah.
You need to come together on the Lord's Day
and
with the community.
And we should point out that for Catholics, that means Mass.
That means the Eucharist, yes.
It means the Eucharist, because that's not just a choice or an option.
No, because that's the way, and we see, like I mentioned, Justin the Martyr in the first century. He said, this is what we do as Christians. You know? There's another wonderful letter from that century, the letter to Diognetus, when he talks about, Christians do this. This is who Christians are.
Right.
One of the things that Justin mentions, Christians come together for the Eucharist.
Right.
And they do it on the Lord's Day.
Right.
And that's who we are.
Right. Okay. Right. So there's a lot here. There's a lot about our personal choices, but also our societal choices, responsibilities of employers, of Catholics, whether we rest or work, and what we do, how we worship. So maybe to go back to the initial question, would you then say that Catholics should not work on Sundays?
If they have the choice. I mean, today our society runs, it's commercial, it's pretty well commercial businesses that work on Sunday. And, not many other businesses work on Sunday. But so because, again, commerce has become the new religion, if you want, and money the new God, and therefore it's 7 days a week and as much as you can. So people, don't always have the freedom to choose when they have to work. So that's a reality. The early church was like that. And so now that we're drifting away from a society which allowed people that freedom, and in a sense encouraged it, because nobody worked on Sunday when I was growing up.
No. So yeah.
And actually, when I was in Cologne for the World Youth Day 3 or 4 years ago. I had a Sunday afternoon and nothing to do, so I went out in the town and just wanted to look at it. And it was just amazing, because everybody was out, old people strolling the streets. There was a little band set up in parks with a beer truck open, you know, in Germany, and couples pushing a baby carriage with children.
Right.
All together, using the playgrounds and the kindergartens and the schools for families, you know.
Yeah, that's right.
And that was it. That was the Sunday.
Working,
and I thought, boy, I haven't seen that for a long, long time in North America. You know?
Good. Let's conclude our conversation by leaving the last word to the one who is the Word. So here's a passage from the book of Acts, chapter 2, verses 41 to 47. Those who welcomed his message were baptized, and that day about 3,000 persons were added. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and fellowship, to the breaking of bread and the prayers. Awe came upon everyone because many wonders and signs were being done by the apostles. All who believed were together and had all things in common. They would sell their possessions and goods and distribute the proceeds to all as any had need. Day by day, as they spent much time together in the temple, they broke bread at home and ate their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having the goodwill of all the people. And day by day the Lord added to their number those who were being saved. So again, that's Acts 2, 41 to 47, Archbishop.
Well, I think that's a wonderful portrayal of the church that St. Luke gives us at the beginning of his Acts of the Apostles. And for me, he begins it with what we would say is the Mass, the teaching of the apostles, the breaking of the bread, the fellowship, the community. It's the Eucharist, and from that flowed that life of the community there. And we see, whether it's idealistic or not, I don't know. You know, but it was a sense of, you had a very wonderful community of people who loved each other and helped each other, of mutual support through their life. So for me, that is just a fine image of the church, but also placing at the very summit of it all the description of the Sunday Eucharist. And all of this flows from that.
Absolutely. Good. Well, thank you so much.
You're very
This
welcome.
is a fascinating question. I hope that it's inspiring our viewers at home to even write in with their comments. We've been speaking with Archbishop Daniel Bohan. He's the Archbishop of Regina. It's been so good that you were able to come to our studio for this. Thank you so much for writing the letter and for spending some time with us today.
You're most welcome.
And thank you for watching. If you've missed part of this program, you can always go to our website, saltandlighttv.org/perspectives, and watch the remainder of this program and all our Perspectives programs. And also remember, we can't do the show without your perspective. So visit us on Facebook and let us know your comments. That's all for tonight, and may God continue to bless you and your home.